We begin today by the Mishnah on the bottom of Daf Yud Beis Amud Beis, the Mishnah. Sagt Heilige Mishnah, Machnis Adam Peireisa. A person is allowed to go and bring in his fruits into the house because he's afraid they're going to get stolen. So again, the point of this Mishnah and the following Mishnah is going to speak about things that a person does in Chol Hamoed that are not necessarily a malacha, but it's extra tircha. And Chazal, certain things that are extra tircha in Chol Hamoed did not allow you to do. But over here, because it is a davara of it, he's afraid it's going to get stolen, so you can bring it into your house. You're allowed to take out the flax from the place where it's soaking. If you're going to leave it there and the soak for too long, it's going to get ruined. You should not leave over the malacha for Chol Hamoed and say, Chol Hamoed, I have more time, so I'm going to leave it to do it then. If it happens to come out that it's in Chol Hamoed, then you're allowed to do it. V'kulan, in all these cases, im kivnu melachtam b'mayid. If you did leave it for Chol Hamoed, you had time earlier, but you left it for Chol Hamoed, yavdu. So then you have to let it get lost. It's going to be aser b'hana because you left it for Chol Hamoed. So it's Rashi says, it's aser b'hana. It's a knas from Chazal that it's aser b'hana. Tane, so in Abraisa we learned about this Mishnah, when it says here that these fruits, that you're going to be transporting it and from one place to another and you're bringing it into your house, and Chol Hamoed, so you should bring it in, but do this in a discreet manner, not publicly that you're making this big transport of all your fruits into your house. It should be because it's Chol Hamoed, people shouldn't see the tircha you're doing. Let's talk to Gemara. Rav Yosef, Havelek Shuri. Rav Yosef had these beams of wood that he had to transport into his house in order for it not to get stolen. Ailinu be a mama. He brought it in broad daylight. He didn't do it discreetly. Amalei Abaye, so Abaye told Rav Yosef, but Vatanya in Abraisa we learned if you have to transport things, bring it into your house, you should bring it in discreetly. So why are you doing this in the middle of the day? Amalei, so he told Rav Yosef, he told Abaye, Tzane dahani yamamuhu. For these beams that I'm bringing in here, so the only way to do it discreetly is daytime. What he meant to say really is, there's no way to do it discreetly. Even if I'm going to do it at night, it's also going to be in a way that the public is going to see what's happening. Why? Even the balelia, if I'm going to do it at night, gavri yisera, because it's dark, you're going to actually need additional people to help me do what I'm doing here. Ubai meduchri denura, you're going to need people to also carry torches to see, to make lights, to be able to carry it. So afsha milsa. So then it's actually going to cause more of public attention by bringing it in at night. So therefore bringing it in by day. Yeah, true, by day also people will see, but there's no point in waiting for it at night. And because it's a davara of it, he's allowed to bring it in even in such a time when people are going to see. And the Mishnah then concluded that if you left over these work that you could have done before for Chol Hamoed, so then it's aser b'hana. You left over this work to be done a Chol Hamoed, even though you could have done it before, umeis. Another person passed away. Mao sheyiknesu bonav achrav. Do we give the knas to the person's children as well, that they are not allowed to have anah from this work that was done on Chol Hamoed? Or maybe the knas is only for the person himself that did the work on Chol Hamoed. So the Gemara brings from other cases where you have a knas as well, and the Gemara explains that you can't learn out from those cases to our case. The Gemara here brings two cases. If you're going to say that the halacha is regarding tzaram oizen b'chayr, a person that went and took an animal which is a b'chayr, and he made a mum in this animal. So tzaram means that a person went and slit a little bit of the ear of a b'chayr. So this is a kayan. A kayan has a b'chayr. When it does not have a mum, has to be brought as a carbon. But if it has a mum, then he doesn't have to bring it as a carbon. He can eat it for himself. And Rashi here brings the pasuk, there's an isser to make a mum in a b'chayr. Once the mum happens, so then you can eat it for yourself. But you're not allowed to go ahead and make the mum. So if you go and make the mum in this b'chayr, so over there, the halacha is konsu b'noi achrav, that it's a knas, that not only this kain himself that made the mum cannot have a gnaw from this animal, but even his children after him, also the knas applies to them, that they should not have a gnaw from this animal that you made a mum in it. So over here, the Gemara says, what's the reason why the knas is so strong, that it goes even for his child? Because that's learned from a pasuk. Rashi brings the pasuk mum la yiyah, that you shouldn't make a mum in it. So that issa da'iraisa, the knas is even for your children as well. That's one case. So you can't learn out from here the Malach on Chol HaMoed, which is the Gzeira of Chazal, not to do this extra tirche on Chol HaMoed. Another case, Vim Timtze Loimar, if you're going to say regarding the following case, Mochar Avdoi Loive Kechavim, a person sold his Evet Kanani to a guy. So an Evet Kanani is not allowed to be sold to a guy, because Evet Kanani is a person that's chayiv in mitzvahs partially. He's chayiv in mitzvahs like an isha, and you sell him to a guy, so then he can't do mitzvahs there. So over there, the halach is that meis, and now this person died after you sold the Evet Kanani to a guy. Konsu b'noi achrov. So the knas is that not that the sale doesn't go through, and not only for himself, but even also for his children, that they can't enslave anymore this person, and he goes out free. Just by selling him to a guy, automatically he goes out free. So this knas is not only for you yourself, but it's also for the children afterwards. And the reason why they were so machmer with this knas is mishum dechol yoyme mafkalei mitzvahs, because every day that you're over on this iser, you're taking him away from the ability to do mitzvahs. But over here regarding a person that does extra tircha and he leaves it for Chol HaMoed against what Chazal said, so what's going to be the halacha? Gavre konis Rabbanon, do I say that the Rabbanon are giving a knas for this individual, for this person that did the malach on Chol HaMoed, but it's not a knas for the actual chefza, for the object itself that the malacha was done with, and v'hal lesse, and now he passed away. That the knas is on the actual money itself, or the object itself, that it now becomes prohibited to be used. And that money is still here, so the knas applies even for the children. So he answered him, and he brings him an example from another case, which is a knas de Rabbanon. To Nisua, so we learned this in the following Braisa, or in a Mishnah actually. It says there in the Mishnah, Sodesh and Iskavtza b'Shvius, a field that a person cleared out from thorns that were in it during Shemitah, which is not a Isam and Atayra. You're not actually doing malacha in the field itself, like planting and so on, but you're clearing it out. It's a Isam de Rabbanon. So the halacha is Tizra l'matzah Shvius. You're allowed to plant it immediately after Shemitah. So this is a kind of work that you did in the field, clearing out the thorns and twigs and things in it that could prepare it for plowing, but it doesn't prepare it yet for planting. So this kind of work, which is awesome with the Rabbanon, Chachamim said it's going to be allowed to do the work right after Shemitah. However, if nitaiva or nidaira, if a person fertilized this field, whether by bringing a wagon of fertilizer and taking it around this field, or nidaira we had before is when a person brings animals in his field and the animals are there and they create the fertilizer in the field. So this is preparing it not only to be able to be plowed, to clear out the thorns to be plowed, but you're actually preparing it mamish to be planted. So over here Chachamim made a gzeira le'tizara l'matzah shvius. You should not plant it right after Shemitah. Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina said about this Mishnah, Naktinon, that we know the halacha regarding this is that Heitiva, person that fertilized his field in Shemitah or Mace and then he passes away, B'nai Zaira, his son could plant it immediately after Shemitah. So here you see Alma, this is a knas for a Isma that Rabbanan he did, Lididei Konser Rabbanan. The knas is only for the person himself that fertilized his field in Shemitah. Librei like Konser Rabbanan. For his son, the Rabbanan did not make this knas. So this is a hachanami. So here as well, regarding the isser of doing the tirche on Chol HaMoed that he could have done before, which is a gzeirim with the Rabbanon, l'didei konser Rabbanon, the knas is for the person himself, l'brei lekonser Rabbanon. If he passes away, this knas does not go down to his children. They could have anah from this money, from these objects. Another example the Gemara brings, Amar Abaye brings you from this case, it says, Naktinon, we know the halacha is, if a person came and was metame, let's say the truma of a kohen. So what happens now? You metame the truma of a kohen, you cause them a major loss. You can't eat his truma anymore. But as the Gemara here is going to say, this is what's called hezek she'eina niker. It's a kind of damage where there's no physical noticeable damage that you could see in the object, and therefore minat teire, this is not, you're not chayav to pay as a mazik. A mazik is only chayav to pay if you actually physically damage it. But if you damage it by making it tamei, so minatayra there's no chayav to pay for that. But you do have to pay midrabanan though. There's a knas, there's a gzeirim midrabanan that you have to pay. So now the halacha is, if you did this kind of damage, which is not niker or meis, and now you passed away, lakonsu b'nai achrav. Your child is not going to have to take responsibility for the damage that you made to have to pay for you. My time, what's the reason? Hezek shein and niker loishmei hezek. Damage that you can't noticeably physically see is minatayra, not a damage, and therefore it's a knas midrabanan. Alididei konsu rabbanan. For the person himself that caused this damage, Chachamim gave him the knas to pay. Librei lekonser rabbanan. But for your child, the Chachamim did not give him this knas. So it's the same thing here also, b'negei to the gzeira of chol hamayid, not to have anah from the extra tircha that you left for chol hamayid. Sagt the Heilige Mishnah, ein loikchin batim avodim u'beheime. On chol hamayid, you don't buy houses and or servants or a beheime on chol hamayid, unless unless you have a certain need for this to be used on chol hamayid. Or if the meicher, the seller, has a need that he needs the money on chol hamayid, so then you're allowed to buy it from him. He doesn't have what to eat. Otherwise, these kind of transactions on chol hamayid is not allowed to be done. Sagt the Gemara, boy minei Rove, Rav Nachman. So Rav asked Rav Nachman the question regarding a worker. Schar po'ule she'ein lo ma yochal. How about hiring a worker to pay him a chol hamayid to do his job, and he needs the money, doesn't have what to eat? Is he allowed to do this work in chol hamayid? The Mishnah spoke about a meicher, person that's selling, that he's allowed to sell things on chol hamayid if he doesn't have what to eat. So how about a worker? Amalei. So Rav Nachman answered, Tanina. We learned this over here in the Mishnah. Because what does it say, the Mishnah? That you're allowed to sell a house and things like that for the purpose of the seller. And then the Mishnah said, that if he does not have what to eat. So Rav Nachman understands this Mishnah. Why does the Mishnah have to add the words, what is that coming to include? When it says in the Mishnah, don't you understand from those words itself that it means that the meicher has a certain need? What's his need? His need is that he has to have money, he needs food. So why does the Mishnah have to spell it out and add the words, so my love, don't you think that it's coming to add regarding a person that's a worker, that he's getting paid wages for his work, and he's allowed to do it on chol hamayid if he needs the money for food? So that's a raya from the Mishnah. So Rava answered him, no, from our Mishnah is not a raya. Loi perushika mafarish. We can learn the Mishnah like the simple pshat of the Mishnah is, when it says she'en lo ma yochal, it's not coming to add another case. It's coming to explain what kind of a tzedich does the meicher have, and that he has to make the sale on chol hamayid, that he needs it not just for profit, but he needs it because he needs food to eat. But not necessarily do we have a source from our Mishnah to also say that any worker could hire himself out on chol hamayid for this purpose.
But this one also needs food.
The what?
Pile needs food too.
And a chanami, but maybe there's a difference between a meicher and a pile, because by a meicher, you don't have the same kind of a tircha like by a pile that's working and then getting paid for that work. Maybe it's different than a meicher. Maybe only a meicher that's selling something it's allowed for this purpose. Maybe the pile, it's not allowed. He's going to have to go and borrow money, and he'll have to make the money back later, but he's not allowed to do work for this money. Eisvei Abaye. So Abaye asked the question on this from the following brayse. It says, Ein kaisvin shtori chayv b'mayit. You're not allowed to write any documents for a loan on chol hamayid. So you have to borrow money on chol hamayid, but you can't document it on chol hamayid. Vim einoi maminoi. And if the lender does not trust you, and if you're not going to write a document, he's not going to lend you the money. So that's one example. Oi she'ein lo ma yochal. Or he doesn't have what to eat, and the Gemara in a moment will explain who this goes on when it says he doesn't have what to eat. So then you could write the document to borrow the money. So the Gemara explains, when the Braisa here says he does not have what to eat, who is this coming to add? Regarding who's it speaking about that he doesn't have to eat? Lav, don't you think, this is coming to add this person that is getting paid for the work that he's doing over here. Who does this refer to? So Rashi says it refers to the scribe that's actually writing this document, and he needs the wages. He needs to earn the money for the work that he's doing to write this document. It's not referring to the loive himself. As Rashi explains, it says there in the Braisa that you need the money to borrow, and the person doesn't trust you. So you understand already from that you're allowed to borrow money. And if he doesn't trust you, it doesn't make a difference. If you need the money for food, you don't need the money for food. It didn't say in the Braisa anything about food. It says if he doesn't trust you, so then you could borrow the money. And then it says, Oy she'en lo ma yochal. So who's that talking about? So the only way to explain it is, that's not talking about the borrower. It's talking about the person that's writing the document, and he needs the money to earn for the fact that he's writing this document. So again, lav lasu yischar pula. Shmami no. So Abaye says, from here you see this point, that even for a worker to make money for the work that he's doing, if he needs it for food, it's allowed. So Rav Sheishes asked on this. So it says, Chachamim said regarding Erev Pesach. This is speaking about Erev Pesach. So Erev Pesach after Chatzais, you're not allowed to work. And before Chatzais, so there's a minig. The Mishnah there in Pesachim speaks about Makim Shenogu. There's many places that had a minig that even before Chatzais already, they didn't do any work. So he said, but there are certain work that even on Erev Pesach before Chatzais, in a place where the minig was, they did not work, but you're allowed to do this work. Chachamim say, Shalosh umaniyais. There are 3 people that are working. Eisen melacha be'erev Pesachim at Chatzais. They're allowed to do their work on Erev Pesach until Chatzais. Hachayatin, the people that are tailors, va'saparin, barbers, va'koivsim, and the launderers. Where do I learn this out from? Hachayatin, the tailors are allowed to do their work. Shekin hedyet, toifek kedarkei, b'choyle shomayit. Because a plain person, as we learned already before, is allowed to sow in his normal way in Cholamayit. So we see that in Cholamayit they allowed you to sow. So similar, on Erev Pesach, before Chatzais, this is allowed. Hasaparim v'arkoivsim, and similar...
Only if you need for...
Yeah, if you need it for Pesach. Hasaparim v'arkoivsim, and similar also b'nigeya to the barbers and the launderers. Shekain, we also find in Cholamayid in certain scenarios that it's allowed to take a haircut or to do the laundry. Shekain abam in Medina Sayyam, a person that came from a faraway place right before Yontif and he didn't get a chance to take a haircut before Yontif or to wash his laundry before Yontif. Vayetzim beis asurin, and also because he came out of a prison right before Yontif. Mustarin l'saper l'chabis b'chayil shamayit. They're allowed to do laundry and to take a haircut in Cholamayid. So therefore, on Erev Pesach before Chatzais, this is also allowed. That's this Mishnah that explains certain things that are allowed to be done on Erev Pesach before Chatzais. And we're learning it out from where? From what's allowed in certain scenarios on Cholamayid. If you're going to say that what you said before is true, that schar pole she'eloi ma yoichal shari, that b'chlal, any worker, if he doesn't have what to eat, he's allowed to work and earn his money for food. So that's allowed in Cholamayid. So if so, I see that any work, there's a scenario, there's a case where if you don't have food, it's allowed. If so, kol malachas nami lishtaru. So learn out from Cholamayid that any work is allowed as well. What's the premise of what the Chachamim are saying over here? That I learn out from Cholamayid, that since I find that these things in certain scenarios are allowed in Cholamayid, so on Erev Pesach before Chatzais, it's also allowed. So if so, any work, in the case where you need food, it's allowed in Cholamayid. So there, learn out from this, when you get to any work, that you can do it before Chatzais, Erev Pesach. You have this scenario when he can earn money and he doesn't have what to eat, that it's allowed in Cholamayid. So why do we limit it to dafka these 3 things that he mentions here? That only the tailors, the launderers, and the barbers. On the conclusion that the Gemara said before. The conclusion the Gemara said was that on Cholamayid, a worker is allowed to do his work to earn money for food. If that's true, so then there's no reason why over here we're limiting the malacha on Erev Pesach to these 3 things. It should be anything.
That's only the Makim Shenagu.
We're talking about Makim Shenagu. That's what this is talking about. And a place where the minig is that you do malacha, you could do any malacha. We're talking about a place where the minig is not to do malacha.
My question really is, why in the Makim Shenagu did they have this minig?
Kasha Famaisa, Azay is the minig.
No.
Maskef lo Rav Papa. So Rav Papa asks on Bechlal this entire comparison here. Rav Papa says, wait a minute, how are you asking such a question? Ela meyato, if you're going to say that you're making a comparison to Cholamayid, that any time you find any malacha that can be done on Cholamayid for any reason whatsoever, so you compare to there and say, Oibazaya and Erev Pesach, you could do this malacha in any way. So if so, binyan lishteri, even to build on Erev Pesach before Chatzais, should also be allowed. Why? I'll show you that there is a scenario that you're allowed to build in Cholamayid. Shekain, we had this Gemara before, if you have a wall that's tilting over into the Rishus Harabim and it's a danger, so you can demolish the wall and rebuild it because of a sakana. So you see that even building a Cholamayid, there is a scenario that it's allowed. So if so, it should be allowed in Erev Pesach. Another question, Maskefla Ravina says, if you're going to make this comparison that anything that's allowed in Cholamayid in any scenario whatsoever should be allowed in Erev Pesach altogether, if so, Elamayata Lavler, a scribe, also Lishtiri should be allowed to write anything on Erev Pesach. Why? Sheken Kaisveik, Hidushe Noshim, Gitten, Vishoivrin, if you're writing a document for marriage, for a isha, or for a get, for a divorce, or for shayvrim, for receipts, they are allowed to be written on Chalamayid, as we'll see later in the Gemara. So since we see that there is certain kinds of writing that are allowed on Chalamayid, so I should learn from here that on Erev Pesach before Chatzos, you're allowed to write in anyway. So once you're making this kind of comparison from Chalamayid to Erev Pesach before Chatzos, basically everything should be allowed. So therefore Rav Ashi concludes over here, and he says that really we're not comparing Erev Pesach, the Issa Malacha of Erev Pesach before Chatzos in those places where the minig was not to do Malacha to Chalamayid. You can't make this comparison for everything. It's only these three Malachas that Chachamim mentioned there that are going to be allowed, not anything else. And again, Rav Ashi explains the difference. Moed Arba Asa Karamis, you're asking to compare Chalamayid to not doing Malacha on Erev Pesach before Chatzos. It's not the same thing. Moed Mishum Tirchahu. On Chalamayid, the reason Chachamim don't allow you to do Malacha is because of the tircha. The extra tircha of Chalamayid takes away from the Simchas Yom Tov. That's the reason why it's not allowed. Or b'maka in Pseide, but in a situation where you have a loss of money, so Sharu Rabbanan, over here Chachamim allowed to do this kind of work. So therefore, not in every case that Makim Pseide could you compare it also to on Erev Pesach before Chatzos. But Arba Asar, what's the reason for Arba Asar on Erev Pesach that you're allowed to do work before Chatzos, certain things? Mishum Tzarech, that's because of certain things that are needed, Mishum Tzarech Yantiv, because you need them for Yantiv. So again, Mishum Tzarech Yantivu, Midi di Tzarech Yantiv, Sharu Rabban, on those things that people need for Yantiv, the Chachamim allowed, and the allowed Tzarech Yantiv, Loi Sharu Rabban, things that are not for the purpose of Yantiv, are not allowed. So only these three things that are mentioned here in the Braisa, which is the tailors, the barbers, and the launderers, those are things that a person needs to prepare for Yom Tov, they're allowed to do it out of Pesach in the morning. But all those other things that we were trying to compare to Chalamayid, to say that you should be allowed to build, you should be allowed to do any work whatsoever, you don't need them for Yom Tov B'chlal. So therefore those things, Chachamim did not allowed to do on Erev Yom Tov.
But if you would need for Yom Tov, they will allow.
Yeah, and a Chanami. So Rashi here Taka points out, just like we said regarding Chalamayid, that if you need to do any work, if a worker needs the wages of his work in order to he needs food for Yom Tov, so the same thing will apply also on Erev Yom Tov. He needs the food for his work. He's allowed to work on Erev Yom Tov. Zok Heilige Mishnah, this is again another Mishnah where you're not actually doing Malacha, but it's an extra tircha that's not allowed in Chalamayid. Ein mefanen mi bayis labayis. You're not allowed to start transporting things from one house to another, and we're talking about a house that's in one courtyard to a house that's in a different courtyard. So this is it's not the time for this in Chalamayid to do this. Aval mefanahu lechatzera. You are allowed to empty out and bring things from a house. So the simple pshat, it seems like, would be from a house in a different courtyard, not into a house in a different courtyard, but into the courtyard itself. That would be allowed. Meviyim kelim, you're not allowed to bring back any kelim, which would mean any clothing or any vessels, from a house, from a person that was repairing your kelim or doing laundry for your kelim. You're not allowed to bring them back home on Chalamayid. And if you're concerned about leaving it there by the uman, that it might get stolen or he might not give it to you, so then you are allowed to bring it from the worker, from the person that was repairing it for you or laundering for you, to a different chatzar. But you're not allowed to deliver it back to your house. So again, this Mishnah is all these things that you're not allowed to do for extra tircha on Chalamayid. So the Gemara first explains here what's the pshat in the beginning of the Mishnah. The first case in the Mishnah, it said, Ein mefanen klal. You shouldn't transport things from one house in one courtyard to another house in a different courtyard. And then what does it say afterwards? And then the seif of the Mishnah, the Gemara doesn't spell out the question, but the question here is, right afterwards in the Mishnah it says that you could empty and transport things from a house in one courtyard into a different courtyard. That's what it seems like it's saying. So what's the difference? What's the difference between bringing it from a house in one courtyard to a house in a different courtyard, or bringing it only to the courtyard? It's basically the same thing of transporting it from one location to another. So why would this be allowed? Amar Abaye, so Abaye answered, no, we misunderstood the Mishnah. Seifa ason l'bayisha b'chotzer. In the Seifa, what it's speaking about is that you're transporting things from your house into the same courtyard of this house itself. You're not bringing it from a house of a different courtyard. So because it's just from the house to this courtyard over here, that's allowed. That's not a big tircha. Then it said in the Mishnah, Ve'ei mevi'in kelim mibeis ha'uman. You shouldn't bring back home any kelim that wore by a house of a craftsman. You can't deliver it back home. Amar Rav Papa, so Rav Papa said about this Mishnah, this is a Gemara that we learned, mamish the same Gemara in Masechta Pesachim. So Rav Papa said, Badeklan Rave, Rave was challenged us, tested us to see if we would know how to answer the following question. Tanan, we learned the Mishnah over here, that you're not allowed to bring kalim home from the house of a craftsman. On Chalamayit. I'll ask you a contradiction from what it says in Masechta Pesachim. You could deliver and bring back home your kalim from a house of a craftsman. And even if these are kalim that you don't need them for the Yom Tov. So here you see that you're both allowed to deliver and bring back home. So Rav Papa said, then we answered Rave, in that Mishnah in Pesachim, it's speaking about regarding Erev Pesach. So in Erev Pesach, they weren't so machmer, they allowed you to deliver and bring back home for the purpose of Yom Tif. And here it's talking about a Chalamayit, so because in Chalamayit there's an additional reason to Aser, which is the extra Tirche, so over here they said that you're not even allowed to bring it back home, a Chalamayit. That was one answer they gave. Or another answer they said is, even if both the Mishnah here and the Mishnah in Pesachim is talking about Chalamayit, over here we're talking about a craftsman that you trust him, so you could leave it by him and you'll bring it back home after Chalamayit. And over there in the Mishnah in Pesachim, it's talking about a craftsman that you don't trust him. Some water. Thank you very much. Okay, so that's so they gave two answers to this question. Now the Gemara is going to bring over here a Braise that is a source for the second answer of the Gemara. Thank you very much. This is like we learned in the Braise over there in Pesachim. So it says there in the Braise, Mevi and Kele mi beisa uman. You could deliver your kalim back home from the house of the uman, from the craftsman. And he brings examples. Kagoin kad mi beis hakadar. You bring a jug from the house of the person that makes these jugs. The kais mi beis hazagog, or a cup from a person that makes the glass cups. And you need these for the Yom Tif. You're allowed to bring them back home. Avoloit samar mi beis hatzava. You're not allowed to bring home wool from the person that was dyeing this for you. V'loit kalim mi beis uman, and not other kalim. Your let's say your laundry from the house of an uman, from the person that was cleaning them for you. If he does not have what to eat, if this craftsman, in other words, is waiting for you to pay him, and he needs the money, so then you can pay him. You pay him for this, but you have to leave your stuff by him. But if once you paid him, you don't want to leave your merchandise by him, because you don't trust him. He's going to come back to him after Yom Tov. He might charge you a second time. So then, you could take your items from him. You can't deliver it all the way back home, and you leave it in a house nearby over there. If you're going to leave it in a house nearby, you're afraid it's going to get stolen. So then, you bring it to a different courtyard. If you still don't trust him over there in that chutzner that someone's going to take it, so you bring it discreetly to your house. So over here in this Mishnah, you see this concept, with this Braise that is, you see this concept that there's a difference, that in a case where you don't trust a person, Chazal allowed you to bring it back home because it could get stolen. Okay, so this is, the Gemara now goes back to the question we had before. The Gemara gave two answers to the contradiction. One answer was that there's a difference between Chalamayid or Erev Pesach. The second answer that we're focusing on now is that there's a difference if you trust him or you don't trust him. So the Gemara now says regarding the second answer, we're over here, Tiratzta, the second answer that you gave just now, you answered Mivian. You explained why in one place it says that you're allowed to deliver it back home, and in one place it says you're not allowed to deliver it back home. It depends if you trust him or not. But Melichin Kashya. But the question of why in one place it says that you're not allowed to deliver it to the craftsman, and in another place it says you are allowed to deliver it to him, that still remains a question. Because over here you're talking about something that's in your house. It's not. There's no question of trusting him or not. So why does it allow you in one place to bring your kalim to a craftsman? Diktani in our Mishnah it says that you're not allowed to deliver it to the craftsman, and most definitely you're not allowed to deliver it to him. So there's still a contradiction regarding delivering it to him, and you can't answer this question about trusting him or not. So therefore the Gemara concludes, Ela machvarte, so therefore the better answer is, Kedeshanya meikara, the first answer that Rav Papa said, which is that there's a distinction between doing these things on Erev Pesach and doing them on Cholamayit. Sagt the Heilige Mishnah, the last Mishnah of the Perek here, Mechapen.
Which is meaning of Medina.
Yeah, okay. Sagt the Mishnah, Mechapen es is bekash. You're allowed to cover your figs that you're drying them, and it's going to rain, let's say, so you don't want it to get wet, so you can cover them with kash, with straw, on Chol HaMoed. So again, this Mishnah is discussing here all the things that are extra tirch on Chol HaMoed, but it's allowed to be done on Chol HaMoed. Rabbi Yehuda says, af ma'avin. It could also be covered thickly. Gemara will explain what ma'avin means. People that are selling fruits, selling clothing, or other kalim, they could sell quietly if it's for people that need these things for Yom Tov. Hatzayadim, people that trap whether animals or birds and so on. V'hadeshushais, and people that are that are what?
The grain pounders.
Okay, grain pounders, they're pounding the grain. Vahagrusais, and also beans, they crush the beans. Oisim betzina, they could do this kind of work quietly, l'tzayrech hamayit, for the purpose of Chol HaMoed. Rabbi Yosi says, Heim echmiru al atzman. They were stringent on themselves regarding these things, which the Gemara will explain exactly what Rabbi Yosi is saying. So first the Gemara explains the first part of the Mishnah, where it says that you're covering your figs with straw, and then it says ma'abin, that you can cover thickly. What does that mean? Pligi barabchia barabba v'rabasi. So they argued about this. V'tarvayu mishmei de Chizki v'Rabbi Yochanan, and both of them were quoting Chizki and Rabbi Yochanan. Chad Omar, one of them said, mechapen means aklushi. Mechapen means that you're lightly covering them. And ma'avin means asmuchi. Ma'avin means there's more tercha involved, you're covering them thicker, a thicker covering. Chad Omar, another opinion is, mechapen, when it says to cover, ben aklushi ben asmuchi, that's whether a light covering or a thick covering. Ma'avin means something else. Oisen kiminkri, that all of these figs that you have here, you pile them up together, and then you cover it. So when you pile it up together, the figs that are on the bottom are going to be well covered because it's a big pile, and also you cover it, so that's a much better covering. Tanyanami hachi, we learned like this pshat, ma'avin means oisa kiminkri. You take all these figs and you make it like a pile. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Yehuda says that even this kind of tirche is also allowed in Chol HaMoed. Then it said in the Mishnah, these people that sell all these things, they could be sold quietly if it's needed for Yom Tiv. And then it concluded that Rabbi Yosi was said that they were machmer on themselves. What did Rabbi Yosi mean when he said that they were machmer on themselves? The question is, was Rabbi Yosi coming to say that they were machmer on themselves, that he wouldn't sell at all in Chol HaMoed, not even quietly as well? So he was more machmer than the Tanna Kama. Or maybe he was actually being more lenient than the Tanna Kama. The Hava of the B'tzina, he was saying, even this itself, that you said that you should sell it quietly, that is only a chumrah. Really, Meka Din, you're allowed to sell it publicly on Chol HaMoed for the purpose of Yom Tiv. It's only a chumrah that they were machmer to sell it quietly. Toshema, the Gemara brings a braisa where it clearly says about what Rabbi Yosi was saying. It says in the braisa, like it said in the Mishnah, people that sell these things on Chol HaMoed, they could sell quietly for the purpose of Yom Tiv. Rabbi Yosi said, Tagre Tverya, the merchants of Tverya, they were machmer on themselves. They kept their stores closed on Chol HaMoed. They didn't sell any of these things at all. So you clearly see that it means that they were machmer not to sell at all. Similar, at Sayadi Chayis Vaifis V'Dagim, people that were trapping animals and birds and fish catchers. So Tzadan B'Tzina, they would do this kind of work in Chol HaMoed quietly, L'Tzayrech HaMoed, for the purpose if you need this food in Chol HaMoed. And then Rabbi Yosi said, Tzadei Akkai, these people that were trappers in the city of Akkai, Henech Mir Al Atzman Shli Tzadan Kolikar, they did not do any of this work at all on Chol HaMoed. A similar thing, the Shushei Chilka, people that were threshing, Chilka, Tirgis, V'Tisni. These are three different expressions of grains and three different ways of threshing these grains, which the Gemara is going to explain in a moment. So Doishish and B'Tzine, they would do this work in Chol HaMoed quietly, L'Tzayrech HaMoed, for the purpose to eat this in Chol HaMoed. Rabbi Yosi said, the Shushe Tzipairi, the people of Tzipairi that did this work, Henech Miru Alatzma Shli Yodoshin Kolikar. They did not do this work in Chol HaMoed at all. So now the Gemara mentioned over here in this braisa these three different kinds of grains that they would thresh them. What does it mean? What do these three expressions mean? Amar Abaye, so Abaye says chilke means chodel etarti, when you thresh it to split these grains into two. Tragis means chodel etlas, you thresh it to split it into three. And tisna means chodel arba, you're threshing it even further to split it into four. That's the pshat that Rabbi Yosi, that Rabbi Yosi said, that Abai that is said. Kiyoser Avdimi, when Avdimi came, he said, Omar kunte. So when it came to chilke, he said, chilke, they actually do not thresh to split it at all. Chilke, the translation of chilke is spelt. That's what it is. So they did not split the spelt at all. It's spelt. So the Gemara is going to ask on this pshat. It's going to bring other places where you find this expression of chilke, and there it doesn't seem like it means spelt. Meisvei, the question was asked, chilke, targis, v'tisni, these three different kinds of grains, Tmein b'chol mokim, are always tamei. So Rashi explains, what's the halacha of food? Food only becomes tamei if it came in contact with liquid. Then it becomes susceptible to tumah. So usually the halacha is that people that have these grains that come from cities, and the people in the cities only eat finer flour, so they would wash their grains before they would crush them. So then we know that those grains are susceptible to tumah. But people from the villages, they eat even dirtier grains, so they did not wash them off before, so it's not susceptible to tumah. But the Braisa here says that these three, chilke, targis, and tisni, because they're being crushed, so therefore they were washed off before in order for it to become moist and soft to be able to crush them, tmein b'chol makayim, it'll always be susceptible to tumah, this kasher, because they were already soaked in water, and we know it's susceptible to tumah. I think I skipped something over here. Okay, I skipped. Let me go back up a second. So it said tmein b'chol makim. So the Gemara asks, that what these three expressions means, that they're crushing it, whether into half or into 3 or into 4. So therefore, it's always going to be tameh. The iskasher, because in order to be able to crush it, they would make it moist, and it already became susceptible to tameh. But according to the opinion that says, what's chilke? Chilke is spelt, and they did not crush it at all. Why is it always tameh? Not necessarily that it becomes susceptible by being wet, by coming in contact with liquid. Answers the Gemara, kagayin de mekalfan, that even this kunte, the spelt, they did peel it. The ilav, the sharalu b'maya, if they did not soak it in water, loyav miklefe, it wouldn't peel. So therefore, even according to this opinion that it refers to spelt, it means the spelt that they're peeling it. If it's spelt that's being peeled, why is it called chilke? The shakal chilkayu, because he takes off the peel and then it becomes very smooth. The word chilke means that it's smooth. The Gemara brings from another brayse where it brings this expression of chilke, and it doesn't seem like it means spelt. Meisvei hanoidim in adogon, a person that makes a neder, not to eat any grain. Also, af bapula mitzri yovish. She's not allowed to eat this barley, not barley, but it's some kind of a bean from Mitzrayim, yovish, when it's dry. It's also like a grain that a person includes in his neder. Umutter balach, but he is allowed to eat this when it's moist. Umutter ba'eres, he's allowed to eat rice. And then it says, Bechilke, Trogis, V'tisni. These three kinds of grains he's still allowed to eat when he makes a neder not to eat from grain. So the Gemara now explains, the one that says that what are these three expressions here? It means that he's splitting it into 2 or 3 or 4 shaper. We can understand why it's not included in his neder not to have anah from grains. The nafkaluhu mitayres dagam, because it's not a grain anymore. It becomes like a cereal. It's a different thing. So therefore, it's not part of his neder. But the opinion that says, what's chilke? Chilke refers to spelt. So what is this? Dagam al. So if so, even if it's spelt that you peeled it, but it's a perfect grain. So why isn't it included in his neder of noidim and dagam? Kashya. So this remains a question. Going back to what it said in our Mishnah about not selling things on Chol Hamoed publicly, Rav Huna sharalu lahana krufyaisa. Rav Huna allowed these merchants that were selling besamim, all kinds of spices, lemezel, to go lizvuni kirchayu b'shuket, to sell their spices normally on Chol Hamoed publicly in the marketplace. As for Rav Kahana asked Rav Huna, Chanus, so it says in the Braisa as follows: Chanus psuchilistov. If you have your store and it's open to this area where there are benches there, it's not open straight into the street, but it's open to more of a private place where there are benches there that people come and sit there and then come into the store. So you could open your store, open the door of your store normally on Chol Hamoed. However, if your door is open more publicly, straight into the Rishus Harabim, so then you cannot open it normally. You keep one door open, and one door you keep locked. The Erev Yom Tov Ha'achrain, but when it comes to Chol Hamoed, the last day of Chol Hamoed, Erev the last days, So that Yontav Achron Shel Chag, Maitzi u'ma'ater es shuki ir bepeiris. You can take out all of your fruits that you're selling into the marketplace. B'shvil kavod Yontav Achron, for the purpose of the honor of the last day of Yontav, so people should be able to buy their fruits for Yontav. So what do we see from this? Mipnei kavod Yontav Achron, in for the honor of the last day of Yontav, then you're allowed to take everything into the marketplace and sell it there. But shalom mipnei kavod Yontav loy. But if it's not the last day of Chol Hamoed for the last day of Yom Tiv, you're not allowed to go and sell it into the marketplace. So how did Rav Huna allow these people that were selling besamim to go out into the marketplace every day of Chol Hamoed and sell it publicly? So the Gemara answers, like kashya. This is not a question. Bepeidi. If you're talking about fruits, so over here, a person might buy fruits for other days of the year, not only for the Yom Tov, so they didn't allow that to be done publicly. And betavlin. And here we're talking about these spices that everybody knows that it's only being sold for the Yom Tov itself. It's interesting, Rashi actually says it's not really talking about spices, it's talking about kruv and karshinin, which is cabbage or leek, which is things that spoil and it could only be used for the Yom Tov itself, and therefore people don't think that you're going to be using it for a long period of time, so therefore that could be sold even publicly out in the street. Taisa says that it's actually talking about spices. That's a simple pshat of these words, tavlin, that it means spices. Hadron alach misha hafach. This is the conclusion of the second perek of Masechta Moed Katan.
Sure, the spice.